Okay. I'm going to start with the rationale of this small research, as I said. I believe that language education today must develop both ethical and digital literacy apart from language and linguistic competence. So this intervention is aimed to use AI meaningfully in order to encourage dialogue, inclusion, and of course, civic responsibility through simulated digital interaction. The research question was, can we use ChatGPT in order to enhance all that to students, and can it lead to higher levels of inclusion, ethics, and active citizenship? The idea is based on 6 pillars. First of all, the critical pedagogy theory. We know that Freire really thinks that we should all challenge power structures and create more powerful students who equally participate. So in order to that, they should explore, be curious and autonomous while learning. And that can be done only when we trespass literacy with only limited reading and writing, and include visual, digital, spatial, and gestural modes. We need some very active citizens in the digital world we live in. So we need them to test source credibility, data safety, and of course, we cannot ignore the learning levels and profiles. So we must include them all. And as part of inclusion, we must support their home languages as well, which are cognitive resources, and encourage inclusion, identity expression, and learning confidence. So that setting was the 3rd grade of an experimental lower secondary school in Athens in the course of modern Greek language with 17 students, aged 15 years old, 2 second-generation migrant students coming from Albania and Philippines in the classroom, and 4 students with learning difficulties. The main issue was that vast range from B1 to C1 Greek language level. So what I started to focusing on was grouping them in mixed skills groups. So peer learning became a very crucial part of my instruction. First of all, I started with the needs assessment, diagnostic tests, observations, student questionnaires, checklists, and conversations, not only with students, but also with parents and, of course, the other teachers. The main issue, as I said, was the linguistic diversity and apparently the low engagement of the non-native students, but also the academic and other struggles of native students as well. So what we needed was a more inclusive, critical, and digitally supported instruction. As I wanted to solve practical challenges in my teaching, I chose pragmatism and action research, which is based on its cyclical process, planning, acting, observing, and reflecting. That allowed me to adapt my material. And I use mixed methods with qualitative and quantitative data. The theme of my scenario was, we are all different, we are all equal. It expanded in 2 periods, 90 minutes in all. And it has been supported with visual aids, sentence starters, and flexible group roles in order to serve inclusion. It has been based on the personality of Malala Yousafzai and her noble speech. She has been chosen because of her courage, youth activism, and the fight for education and equality. The activities designed were video watching and summarizing, building concept maps with themes like equality, justice, a group discussion on democracy, interview questions formation, ChatGPT set as Malala for responses. We had the evaluation of the answers of ChatGPT in terms of term reliability and ethics, and a group reflection and written reports after that. So apart from linguistic targets that I can summarize in direct and indirect speech, more advanced vocabulary, thematic vocabulary, I wanted my students to be able to collaborate and role play, to use and access digital tools, and of course, to pinpoint aspects like discrimination and link them to democracy and justice. This is the worksheet. There were glossaries and starters, sentence starters, and other scaffolding material. First of all, as I said before, we watched a speech and students summarized it and identified the main theme with prompts, of course, in order to have an authentic input. We then moved to concept mapping of key terms like freedom, equality, responsibility, and participation. We used E-class application for that in order to enrich the vocabulary and argumentation. And in order to build more strong argumentations, there was a prompt, how could democracy have changed Malala's story? So students could express their personal and civic views. The last activity was about questions. So it was part of syntax structure. The students at the first phase brainstormed and wrote 5 questions per group. Then they asked ChatGPT, which was the most exciting part of the procedure. The ChatGPT was set to answer like Malala, and migrant students were enabled to use their mother tongues and get Greek translations. That enabled them and facilitated the procedure. And the last phase was a very crucial one. The students had to assess the language and the content of the answers given, provided by AI. So they focused on the source reliability and its quality. There was furthermore a homework task. Students had to ponder on the ethical use of AI and its learning impact. All that, of course, occurred with constant support and guidance and feedback and clarifications and scaffolding strategies that I described previously. I assess my students based on the criteria of quality of questions, on the level of their ethical awareness, critical thinking, collaboration, communication skills, responsible AI use, and report quality. And the students assessed, evaluated ChatGPT in terms of source reliability, relevance, objectivity, ethicality, clarity, and coherence. The outcomes were in all successful. Of course, there were some time constraints and vocabulary overload for some students, but the students reinforced the critical thinking, they reflected more ethically, and they recognized AI's potential as well as risks, but in a very safe environment. So they had time to rethink and evaluate. Of course, as we said, there were linguistic and communicational gains, and a social emotional development, which was the most important of all, because isolated students with the use of translanguaging, as well as the visuals and all the other scaffolding, had the chance to be more present, more active than ever. So in all, the suitable theoretical framework, real-life experience, problem-solving and exploration, and some boost from the teacher led to the higher-order thinking for many of them, and we managed to surpass some learning or language barriers. The digital skills, the critical evaluation and online decision-making were enhanced. The need for human mediation and AI limitations were acknowledged. But of course, all that happened with an ethical integration of AI, with a student-centered design and the constant adaptability of the teacher. The time constraints, the classroom heterogeneity, as well as the limitations of ChatGPT that the students alone acknowledged at the end, like the emotional nuance, like the absence of contextual depth and clear feedback, or the teacher mediation that had to replace all that, were some very important difficulties, let's say, that we had to fight. But in all, AI, we come to the conclusion that really supports tasks like grammar, vocabulary, summarizing, reading comprehension, but we can go beyond that. It can also assist language learning and teaching in creative writing, in debates, in role-playing, poetry analysis, maybe, but only under the prism of critical pedagogy, digital equity, and learner agency. AI is a partner. It's not replacing human activity, and that is the conclusion my students came to. The success of the design depends on all participants' engagement, a thoughtful and ethical integration, and human guidance. Thank you all for your attention.